This actually became something very clear to me in the course that ultimately led me to launch Evelo Health. And I remember it really clearly because in the flagship model, what I would do is work with a team. We'd come up with a great idea or what we thought was a great idea, work it through the flagship process, ultimately launch the company. I'd step in as the founding CEO. And then at some point, we would go and hire someone as the full-time or the go-forward CEO. And what was interesting is I remember distinctly, I was having a discussion with one such candidate. And he said to me, "What's the one thing in your life that you're most proud of?" Well, my response was convincing my wife to marry me. He then said, "No, no, 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 no. Okay, I guess what's number two?" And I said, "Having my kids." And I said, I'm going to be intentional about that order because number one is a prerequisite for number two. He said, "Okay, fine. How about a work-related something?" And I thought about it. And the answer that I was able to come up with was during a role that I had and still have with the United Nations Sustainable Development Solutions Network. I got involved in co-authoring the Global Development Goals. And I shared that with him as what I thought was the most impactful thing that I did. But what was interesting to me, because that goal really speaks to something that's been driving me of how can you have big impact, global impact, real impact. It also hit me that that wasn't the impact that I set out in my career to ultimately achieve. And what I was really trying to figure out how I could achieve, and that helped to clarify it in words. If I can go back to the MIT motto, menis et manus, minds and hands, it's the how do I build something, build it directly that's able to unlock this kind of transformation. And I've been privileged along the way to be involved in companies that span from energy companies looking to replace the way we think about fuels to agriculture companies like Indigo and Inari that are allowing us to rethink the way we use, treat, think of agriculture and what ultimately agriculture can do with us. But most of my time in the entrepreneurial world has been spent in the therapeutics world. And there, it's always struck me that there's this strange discontinuity. Of course, we all know that therapeutics have changed many people's lives, have changed their families for the positive, and that's been great. But over the last century or so, there have been all of 1,500 drugs that have been approved. There are over 13,000 diseases that exist. And so when we look at it, we're just at the beginning of our trip to try to change the way that we deal with disease. We're barely at the tip of the iceberg around how we can treat, how we can manage disease. We don't even have enough drugs, if we assumed it was one drug per disease, which it's not, to statistically be the amount of an iceberg that's above water. And it's in that context that we really have to recognize that we're at the beginning. So I'm really excited by this notion that we can take this emerging field and make it something that can be truly impactful and impactful, frankly, around the globe.